Hello, everyone. I hope everyone's doing well. We'll get started here in just a couple minutes as I get my screens all set up to share with you. If you're having trouble hearing me or anything like that, please let me know. There's a questions section in your application here, the GoToWebinar application. And I'm going to share my screen here. Let's see how this looks. Perfect. All right, it's 12 o'clock. It's noon on the East Coast. I'm glad you're all with me. Thank you for being here. My name is Paul Merrill, and I'm from Beaufort Fairmont Test Automation Services. And we eat, sleep, live, and breathe test automation. We love it. It's what we do. It's what makes the world tick for us. We're here to make a positive impact on the world through test automation, and we hope that we do that with you here today. We're based in Cary, North Carolina. My name is Paul Merrill. I'm the CEO, the founder, and I'm also a consultant for the company. We work with companies across the US to deal with problems like, how do I sync up testing and development in agile environments? How do I get test automation running so that I can support my DevOps culture and my DevOps practices? And finally, how do I automate tests to begin with? We do that through consulting, we do it through training, and we do that through people. So we have people who are experts in this field who can help you out. So hopefully we're at the point where everyone can hear me, everyone's doing well today. Once again, I appreciate you being here. We're going to talk about ROI, return on investment, and I'm looking forward to this a lot. So as people are joining in here, I'm just checking in and making sure that people can hear me. It looks like people can hear loud and clear, so that's great. A couple points of reference. So you have a control of some kind. It may be a desktop control for GoToWebinar. In there you have several things. You can see a place to write questions. As you have questions, please type them in there. What I found over time is that people have questions all the time, but many times I'll break at one area to answer questions. And then we have to wait for people to type their questions. And nobody wants to wait. I don't like to wait. You don't like to wait. Let's not wait. When you have questions, type them into the questions box, and I'll try to make sure that we have time set aside for those questions as we get going. A couple other things. I have a handout today. I never do handouts. Today I have a handout. It is the Beaufort Fairmont Test Automation ROI Calculator. It is very simple. We're going to use it during this. You can play with it on your own. It's in Excel. If you're a technical person, Excel may be a little ugly. I understand. But it is there. It does work. And I'm looking forward to getting feedback on that and thoughts on that as we go along. Once again, my name is Paul Merrill. My Twitter handle is here, dpaulmerrill. I love seeing tweets during this thing. I've got my phone off, so I'm not going to see the notifications, but I do love going in afterwards and seeing what people are interested in, what they take pictures of, what they comment on during the course of a webinar. So a couple things going on with us. We've got Megan Thompson coming up on the 21st of November, right before you take time off for Thanksgiving in the United States. The week before that, 1 p.m. on the 21st, Megan's going to join us. She's going to talk the future of test leadership, which I'm very excited about. Megan is a fairly new voice in the test world. I say new voice. She's had a voice for a long time, but she's been speaking a little more loudly and a little more publicly lately in the last year or so. And Megan and I have talked several times about a number of different testing topics. I love hearing her perspective and the way that she looks at things. And I'm very excited for her to get this opportunity to speak to you all on the future of test leadership. And she'll be coming at that from a manager's perspective, which I think is going to be wonderful. Make sure to join us for that on the 21st. You can find all of our webinars on beaufortfairmont.com/webinars. All of the old webinars are there. And I know your next question, Paul, will this be recorded? It is being recorded right now, and it's going to be up there available for you as soon as this is over. You're also able to go to the very same registration link you used to get here and log in to the recording. So make sure to share that with your friends, your colleagues, and other folks that you'd like to share it with. I'll be in Buffalo next week. So if you happen to be in that area and you're like, Paul, I have a meetup in that area and I don't have a speaker next week, I'm going to be there all week. I could do it Tuesday night, Wednesday night, Thursday night. Those are the 3 nights of the week I could do it. So let me know if you want to hear me speak in Buffalo. It's short notice, I understand, but I'd love to talk to some folks there and get to know some folks and make some new friends up in Buffalo. The other thing that I want to start talking about is TISCA 2020. If you haven't heard about TISCA yet, you've been living under a rock. I'm sorry to tell you this, but you have. So TISCA is the Triangle Software Quality Association. I'm a volunteer for it, a volunteer on the board. We are volunteer run. We're a nonprofit organization, and we help testers develop in their careers, develop their skill sets in the Research Triangle area in North Carolina. We have a conference every 2 years. It will be in February from the 26th to the 27th, and the conference day is a very, very nice price of $149 for that. We'd love to have you join us, tsqa.org. It's going to be a wonderful, wonderful conference. We have Angie Jones as the keynote speaker. We've already signed on Lisa Crispin as a workshop person. She's going to be doing that with Ashley Hunsberger, who lives here. We have Mike Lyles coming in to do some workshops. A lot of big names are going to be coming. I'll be speaking there. Ginny Bramble will be speaking. Some really great names from the area, and we've had a lot of response for the CFP, and that's still open. So if you've never spoken at a conference, make sure to check that out. It has some nice benefits too, like travel and whatever else. So you guys know, the ones of you who have been with me for a while, you know I have the B list every month. These are some folks who have been good to the company, good to me, or just done good things. Maybe they retweeted something, maybe they made a comment on a LinkedIn post, maybe they said, Paul, I love your webinars, keep it up. All that stuff is fuel for Beaufort Fairmont, it's fuel for me, it keeps me going, and I appreciate the heck out of it. Sometimes it's people who do a lot more than that. There's some folks on here who have taken some responsibility off of my shoulders. There are people who have worked with me in other types of relationships that I just appreciate the heck out of. So thank you very much to those individuals, and good luck to you to make it onto the B list next month. I have a posting. We're getting the business out of the way here. I promise it's less than 10 minutes. We're only 7 minutes in, so I got 3 minutes left here, and I think it'll be shorter than that. I'm looking for an automation engineer for a client. They need a early to mid-level automation engineer. We're really just looking for that automation first mindset and being willing to work with a proprietary licensed automation tool on UI tests. There will be a little bit of manual scripting, but mostly it's UI automation. Here's the link. You can find it on Beaufort Fairmont, so beaufortfairmont.com/automation-engineer. So take a picture, come back and look at the recording later. All of the information for that is out there. Remote, and it's US only. You have to be located in the US. I prefer North Carolina, Colorado, Illinois, or Iowa. I still haven't fixed that. That should be IA instead of IO. So finally, we do a $50 Amazon gift card giveaway every single month. Make sure to stick around to the end of the webinar for a chance to win. And now let's get going. ROI and test automation. Are you missing it? I hope not. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to talk about ROI first, because I know a lot of people come from a technical background. And if you have questions, once again, type them up as we're going along here. And I'll take a break and look at some of these as we move forward. So return on investment. A lot of people like to use this terminology. So the idea is we make an investment in something, we expect to get a gain, there were costs involved. How do we calculate whether or not it was a positive or a negative for the company? And this is the formula for it. It's very simple. You take the gain from the investment minus the cost of the investment, subtract that, divide by the cost of the investment, you get your ROI. It's generally done in a percent or a magnitude. Today we're going to be looking at percent. Begs the question, what's a gain and what's an investment? So for the purposes of this discussion, these are the ones that we're going to be looking at. And I know a lot of people come to this in one type of mindset, execution time. A lot of people think that test automation, that the benefit is the execution time. A human being would do the exercises on their computer to exercise the code under test, to exercise the system. They would look at the results, determine whether or not those are what we expected, communicate that back to someone. That execution time done manually is generally longer than if you had a computer do it. Many people think just simply execution time, that's all that matters. And we think that the faster execution time equals a gain, our entire gain. We're going to be looking at this today. There are a lot of other details to this. It's a lot more complicated than just execution time. Execution time is one factor. A faster execution time is less than or equal to the gain that you're going to see from test automation. There are a lot of other gains to it. Today, we're going to look at the simple case, and we're going to look at just execution time because that's all vendors sell you. If you're buying a tool, that's all they think about. So I want to discuss it at that level very, very quickly, or today in depth, not quickly, but in depth. There are a lot of other gains I mentioned: faster delivery, less downtime, faster recovery, and you can outpace your competitors. How can you do that? Well, look, if you know that your application isn't broken when your developers work on it, and you know that very, very quickly, you can release more quickly. As you learn to release more quickly, you get better at it, you can do it more often, and by getting more code out faster, you can begin to experiment in the marketplace, learn what your customers like and do not like, adjust to it because you can release quickly, you can change what you're doing, and software is soft, right? We can flex what we're doing and learn more from our customers, hopefully getting to some business purpose. A lot of people like to think of that as profit. Sometimes it's revenue, sometimes it's traction, lots of ways that we can think about that. On the investment side, so the gain is on one side, the investment is on the other. So on the investment side, creating tests, we think of that as the investment. We're going to be writing these automated test cases. The creation of them, that's the investment. And what do we hear a lot of times from vendors? And I have no problem with vendors. We are not vendor specific. We don't sell a tool. We try to stay vendor agnostic. We work with many different tools. But many times from people who build tools, the argument is it's quicker to write test cases. Makes perfect sense. Works into the argument that's already in your head, the one you came to this with, a lot of you. We thought, you know what? If I execute my test cases faster, that's the gain. If I'm able to write the test cases faster, that's a lower investment. My ROI goes up. Easy, right? That's easy. But there's a lot more to it. So creating tests, that creation is less than or equal to the investment. There's a lot more to it. When we create tests with record and playback, there's a lot more that should be going into that. We can't just record and play back an automated test and expect it to run repeatedly in a robust fashion many, many times a day, even many times a year. You also can't create a test and expect it to live forever and have no maintenance on it. You'll need better tests than that. Your people will need better skills than point and click and record and playback, or whatever the latest AI craze is that says that some Skynet is going to come down and do your testing for you. It's not. I haven't seen it yet. There's some good solutions out there. They take care of portions of the problem of test automation. They do not cover the gamut. I believe it'll be a very, very long time before they do, if they do. You'll need to increase the skills that you have, and your resources are part of that investment. Are we willing to dedicate our finances, our budget to cloud computing, to making sure that we have plenty of instances available of the application under test so that we can automate faster? Are we willing to dedicate time into making sure that we can deploy these things? We can deploy systems. That's a major part of the investment. If you can't deploy your system easily, why automate? Why automate? Why are you going to run automated tests on something you can't deploy easily? It's hard to deploy internally. We can only deploy once per year, Paul. Internally? Yes, internally. Why? And I have clients all the time saying this once per year is a little bit of an exaggeration, but 4 times a year maybe, or once a month. Why? Well, because it takes so many people to do it. Why does it take so many people to do it? Why haven't we scripted this? Why haven't we put effort into that? Many times we get clients who say, look, we don't want to deploy faster. We don't want to put code out faster. We don't want to do that. All we want to do is automate the testing part. And I'm going to show you why that's such a loss for them, why they're completely missing out on the test automation benefits, the return, why the return is so small in those cases, whether they know it or not. Not being able to deploy is a lot like riding on a stationary bike. So you learn to ride on a stationary bike, you exercise all the time, you get really, really good at it, and you decide you're going to enter the Tour de France, right? You're going to go out and enter the Tour de France. And here you are at the starting line and you can't balance on your bicycle. That's crazy. That's crazy. That's what we do a lot of times when we do test automation alone. We pretend like we're going to get really good at it. We go in and we do a lot of recorded playback or use an AI tool or whatever else, but we can't deploy the application. We have to practice that deployment process. We have to script that deployment process. We have to make sure that it is persisted in code and then it can be executed anytime, anywhere, without a problem. The way that you get better at that is by practicing. You don't practice on a stationary bike. You don't keep the same release for 6 months or 3 months or 1 month and practice running automated tests on it. That's riding on a stationary bike. We have to get good at deploying, and the best way to get good at something is to practice. So we practice in our lower environments, our pre-prod environments. We get really good at it. We get good at it by failing internally. We get so good that when the Tour de France comes, we have trained properly at altitude with proper inclines and with all the bumps on the road. We know how to deploy at that point in time, and we do it well. Automation without proper deployment processes is silliness. So let me show you a comparison between two companies. These are two different companies, and I understand this may be a little challenging to read here. And I'm just going through a couple of questions here and seeing if there's anything that's we're ready to answer. Two companies, Project A, Project B. Maybe a little difficult for you to read. I'm going to tell you what's here. Project A, you see a red line on top and a green line on bottom. The red line is the cost of investment. The green line is the gain from investment. On the left side, you see some numbers. Those numbers are dollars. At the top is 250,000. At the bottom is $0. The x-axis on this is month 1, month 2, month 3, and so on, all the way up to month 10. And you can see here that the investment goes up, but the gain doesn't go up. So they invested several people whose labor got up to almost $250,000 in 10 months, and their gain from that was minimal. They didn't even get up to $50,000. It's a terrible, terrible project. There were a lot of reasons this happened. This was a real life project. It had some major issues, and we can talk through those if you want. A big part of it was how they approached automation, not being interested in continuous integration, trying to use a record and playback tool only without investing into their people and making sure that they had the skills to move forward, and poor leadership was a major part of that as well. Project B, this was one where it worked. Solid technical leadership, and what do you see? 22 months, but even if you look back here, and my screen is over here that I'm looking at, even if you go back to 10 months, you see that the investment was well below that $1 million, that first line there, well below that, probably lower than that 250,000 on the other one, on Project A. And we saw a gain of nearly $1 million, maybe a little over $1 million in the first 10 months. I know, you're thinking this is crazy. It doesn't make sense. I'm not willing to believe that that is the gain, that you could get that high and that you could actually get up to 600,000 in 22 months, Paul. The numbers are too big. I don't believe you. That's fine. You don't have to believe me. I can't force you to believe me, but we're going to go through the numbers and you'll be able to see. So real quick, Randall says he would love to hear more about why it went wrong. Hey, we can talk all day about that. I do these webinars every single month, and every month I give you another piece of what went wrong with that type of project and what goes right in the ones who do it right. A couple of things to keep in mind with this. What I found in doing this exercise of going through ROI again, and I've done this many times over the course of my career. This time I went through it again. I put a brand new spreadsheet together, brand new worksheets, and thought through it on my own again from the very beginning. And I like doing exercises like that because it makes me think about what we're actually doing in these projects. And is this relevant to real life projects? And it is. So what you see in front of you has several assumptions, okay? So I just put the formula on the left just so that we could see exactly what's going on here, right? So the gain from the investment over the course of 1 year, this assumes 1 year. These numbers are all just from year number 1, okay? So the gain from the investment was $79,800. And how did we get that gain? Well, we looked at the number of test cases that were automated. We have 1,000 here in the bottom right, 1,000 test cases. That's kind of crazy, right? If they're any size test cases, maybe it was, maybe it wasn't big ones in this case. It assumes 4 release cycles per year. So you can see this if you've already opened up your spreadsheet, if you've already downloaded that calculator and started looking at it. This is the case that's in there, okay? It's already set up with this. You see the blue column, and I'm gonna get into this and show you the spreadsheet in just a minute if you can't download it, if you're having troubles. But we have 1,000 tests that we wanted to automate. We had 4 releases per year, 5 days per release, 5 calendar days per release. 10 testers would be doing that test cycle. In order to automate these, we did 2 test automation engineers, and we used the figure of 2 hours per test case to automate. That may be fast, that may be slow, depending on what we're doing here. I've seen test cases where it took 3 weeks to automate it or more. And I've seen ones who took 2 or 3 minutes. So it just kind of depends. And we have to use some kind of averages. Look, I know we're all technical people here, especially all with testers. We're all saying, look, Paul, those are averages, they're silly numbers. Fine, that's why I gave you the spreadsheet. Go in and tweak the numbers, figure out what you think is right and see what the numbers are, okay? But in this case, with an investment of $200,000 across 1 year, we had a gain of $79,800, and we come out to negative 60% in the first year. You just wasted your money, didn't get anything back in 1 year. And some people are okay with this. Some companies come to us, oh, we don't expect to get anything in the first year. I understand. I understand why you believe that would be okay. I'm a little more impatient than that, I guess. So I like better results than that. And owning a small business, that's kind of has to be that way. So the true return, the return when you actually make your money back, in this case, doing things, just considering execution time, just automating the tests the way they are, running them the same number of times that you ran the manual test cases, you get your return in year 3. That's a long, long time to wait. Does anybody have a product that works exactly the same in year 3 that it did in year 1? Because this doesn't even consider the maintenance that test automation would have to do in order to keep those tests working from year 1 to year 3, okay? So you make your money back in year 3, that aside. So here's the thing, that's terrible. You are fired. If you're an executive and you make this decision, if you are a VP or higher in most organizations, and this is the kind of return you expect, you're fired. You shouldn't be doing it. I'm sorry to tell you, but that's how your board is thinking. That's how your president of the company is thinking. That's how each of those folks are thinking. You can't go and waste that kind of money. That's just not the way to do it. Let's do something different, okay? And I'm laughing at you. I think it's funny. Not really. I feel your pain, and I want to make sure it goes wrong. I only think it's funny when you don't listen to what I'm telling you and you do it anyway. That's unfortunate. But what we want to do here today is talk about how to do it better and what the way to think about this to make money is. This is clearly not the way to get a return on your money quickly. We have a couple questions here. It's hard for me to do 2 things at once, so I want to read through these briefly. Yeah, so someone says already, Akash, and I think I spoke with Akash over LinkedIn, and I appreciate your comments there. He doubts his ROI numbers because they're so phenomenal when you start factoring all the possibilities of UI automation and RPA. Absolutely, they get really big really quick, and people do doubt them. I understand where you're coming from on that, and we're gonna see it here in just a minute. So really quickly, let's consider this with continuous integration. So if you're an executive, you don't know continuous integration, that's fine. If you go to your developers and you say, look, I want to run my test automation, I don't care how you do it, just make sure it's in continuous integration. You can just use those words. Make sure it's running in continuous integration. That's the main thing you need to tell them, because that's what gets the benefit. The rest of this stuff, automating tests, you don't get benefit for very quickly. You get benefit in a very, very long time. So in year 1, just using continuous integration, only running continuous integration within the test cycles that we specified. So we said a 5-day test cycle 4 times a year, okay? So if it takes 1 day to run all of your test cases, your automated test cases, over 5 days of a release, then you get 5 times you run it instead of 1 during that time. So what I'm looking at from the gain here is the amount of time it would have taken a human being to do this. That's your gain, because the automated tests are running much, much faster. So in this case, we see a much better number, 300%, 3x the number. Good. Your executive says, look, this actually makes sense. I'm good with this. I can feel the difference. I know that there's a difference. My developers are getting feedback much more quickly. I like the way releases are going. It feels like we don't have to wait on testing during releases. And it's awesome that we can do this in 1 day or whatever the number is, 1 day as opposed to 5 days. And those 10 other testers that we have been able to repurpose them. And you know what they're doing during that release cycle, that 1 day release cycle? They're all teaming up. They're doing exploratory testing. They're having bug hunts. They're getting together and they're doing much, much deeper, more complex work because they helped write those tests that are persisted now in automation. They don't ever have to think about that again, except for in troubleshooting, except for in looking into why results from test automation were different than what we expected. They're able to become much, much more valuable to the company because these are the people who know your application best. They generally know it better than developers. They generally know it better than business analysts. They generally know it better than product managers. And when I say they know it, they know what the application actually does at a very, very deep level. They're able to go deeper because they're no longer spending their time and their mind share on menial tasks like logging in and making sure certain passwords work. That's gone. They don't do that anymore. So huge return. Return comes in year one. Couple of notes here. Let's see. Let's just see what some of these notes are. Yeah, so, and we're going to go through the spreadsheet in just a minute. And there's someone saying that the spreadsheet reflects 798,000, not 79,000. I'll go back and look at that. Maybe I changed it before I uploaded it. I don't think that I did, but I'll check on that, Lou. Thanks for the note. A couple other things. I'm not going to read through all these. If it's a long question, it's hard for me to get into it and read it, and I don't want to take up your time with it, but just a quick break here. You can't equate manual tests with an automated run, says Simon. The manual tester will test so much other stuff without being told to. You're exactly right. That's exactly right. And Simon, you also haven't heard me say get rid of testers, right? You haven't heard that because I'm not going to say that. We need humans to do what humans are good at. We need test automation to do what test automation is good at. Test automation cannot find a bug. What it can do is it can detect change or it can determine correctness provided it was programmed correctly. Those are the only two things it can do. Humans can do much, much more. So what I want to do with automation is have automation do the things that it does very well and not have the human do those as often, and instead get humans to do more of what they're good at. So that's where I'm coming from on this on Simon. And I think you'd say, therefore, you don't need the numbers to be the same. You're right, you don't need the numbers to be the same. For this exercise, I did, because this is how a lot of people think, and I wanted to go through this argument first. So now we get into continuous testing. Remember what we assumed before. We assumed that we were only running the new automated tests during that 5-day window 4 times a year. What if we run those tests every single day, 200 and some odd days a year? What if we do that? Now what happens? 2,500%, 250 times what you were getting before. Maybe I got that wrong, 25 times what you were getting before. That's crazy. That's a crazy return on your investment, right? It's insane. And people look at these numbers and they go, there's no way, Paul. Well, you just run the tests more often. They're automated. Run them more often. And you know what happens when you run them more often? Not only do you learn more about the application during that time and get faster feedback for your developers, the other thing you get is you get better tests. Not very many people are going to sit there and look at failing test cases if they're worth their weight. Look at failing test cases and not go fix them or do something about them. We're going to go in, we're going to make sure, because they run so often, that they're working all the time, that they're up to date. It's easier to update them because we run them more often. We see every single day, oh, 9 tests failed yesterday, 12 tests failed today. Jan was working on such and such feature. Let's go and see if there was an impact there. You know, okay, so there were no failures yesterday. There's 49 today. Steve was working on such and such, and that's where we saw the most failures. That is powerful stuff when you do it the next day. When we have to wait 3 weeks, 6 weeks, 10 weeks later to figure out what the problem is and troubleshoot it and figure out the defect, we're going to have some issues. It's going to be hard for people to remember that and understand what was actually changing there and what was going on. So, and it looks like there was not necessarily a problem with the spreadsheet. There may have been a problem in how I displayed it, but Luke told me that it looks like it's correct. So what I want to do right now is I'm gonna try to change what I'm sharing on my screen. And I appreciate you guys bearing with me as I do this. Go ahead and type in more questions if you have them. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna start sharing and it didn't ask me what I wanted to share. That's interesting. Let me do it this way. I want to share. Let's see what it does if I do this. That's almost right. All right, you should be able to see the same spreadsheet you have in front of you. Let me know if that's not the case. It looks like it is the case from where I am. I'm gonna make this a little bigger, make this even bigger just to make sure. I know for me, my eyes are changing. The things that I used to be able to see, I can't see anymore. My wife laughs at me now because I have to take my glasses off to read anything. And it's funny to her, but it won't be in a few years. So here we are, a very simple calculator. And it's fine. A lot of you guys are saying, hey, but Paul, that doesn't figure in this, it doesn't figure in that, it doesn't figure in that. Here's the thing, this is incremental. I'm giving you an increment, I'm putting it out there. If you've got ways to make it better, let me know. Let's make it better together. Let's figure out how to make it more to your liking. But today you have this calculator, yesterday you didn't. So we're in a better place than we were, okay? So very simple, and I wanted to keep it simple for a lot of reasons. Inputs, number of test cases, 1,000. Number of releases per year, 4, just like we said before. Amount of days for manual test case, 5. Testers per test cycle, 10. All the same assumptions we had there. We see the same percentages, minus 60, 300, and 200, 2,500. The worksheet, all the data that I use for this and the calculations are below. So you scroll down and you can see how I did my math. You start trusting me more now, right? Okay, Paul's showing his math. He's not just doing magic. So we said above, and I've got that linked above. So change, if you're gonna make changes, make them in the blue here, okay? So you don't break other stuff. So 1,000 test cases, and I put in an hourly rate there. Maybe that's not the case where you live. Maybe it doesn't feel right to you. It's a nice even number, and it's a number that I think is close to reasonable for testers. When you factor in benefits, when you factor in insurance, when you factor in 401k matching, all those types of things, that number gets a little higher than maybe you would think it would be. And once again, maybe that's wrong. Go ahead and change it if you need to change it. That one you would change here. Annual releases comes from the box above. So we see amount of days per test cycle, 5, and then if it's automated, it only takes 1 day to run. That's what I'm making the case for here. So if you want to change the number of days or the amount of time that it takes to run your automated tests, for instance, maybe 1,000 test cases only take a quarter of a day to run. A full 24 hours to run these is pretty high, right? So you could put in a fraction here like 0.25 and figure out what the return is on that. Hours, number of testers that are needed to run this. So for automated tests, I'm assuming a full tester needs to run the automated test rather than the 10 people who are doing it before. That's probably high because you don't want to have to babysit your automation. If it takes a day to run, I need to click it when I get in the morning or have a timer go off when I leave for the night, and then in the morning come in and see the results, spend 2 or 3 hours going through the results, maybe less, hopefully less, figuring out what's going on, triaging the issue, sending it over to the right developers. That might be much, much less than one person just to run these. But on the other hand, you're probably going to continue developing automation as well. So maybe we keep that in there. Person hours, total execution time, average execution time. So this just is figured out. So in minutes, the number of minutes per execution of a particular test case. Labor costs, much, much lower. It actually only takes 1 hour per day to run these things. And now that I'm looking at this, I'm realizing that I actually did that calculation. Forgive me, it's been a little while since I looked at the actual numbers. I don't need to go through all of this. Hopefully this makes sense to you. Once again, you can change all of this to your liking. You've got a downloaded copy. You can figure out if I made mistakes or where you would do it differently. The payoff time we said would be 3 years. There it is right there in the numbers. That's that minus 60%. Here's year 3 where you finally get 20% back on that investment you made in year 1. We don't include any investment for year 2 and 3, which is highly unlikely. Chances are you continue to make investments in this. Most customers, what I find is they get automation working really well and they want to do more of it, not less. They want to do more because the investment they find is so beneficial that they want to keep doing it. Here are the numbers for ROI with CI. So use continuous integration and the numbers go up drastically. It goes way, way up. What if we use continuous testing? Here are the numbers for that. You're welcome to go in and investigate them, see if my formula are right, see if I did this in a way that you think makes sense, add to it, send me a copy back on how you changed it, and let me know what changed. So that's the spreadsheet. I want to open up to any questions here. It's been a little while since I asked about questions, and there are a bunch of them. So let's see, question. Yeah, so this is another piece of this. Akash asked another wonderful question. I would expect that based on our conversations on LinkedIn and other places. He says, mostly the argument I get from leadership on such examples, like the ones I'm giving, that now you can run tests multiple times during the day as opposed to 4 times a month is, well, we didn't do that before. Any ideas on how to better convince them on the real ROI? Yeah, okay. So here's my answer to that. And I've had clients say this, well, we don't need to run it 10 times a month. We don't need to run it 10 times a week. Yeah, but why not? Why not? If you can find out if the status of your product has changed during the development cycle, why wouldn't you want to know that? I'd want to know that. It's like saying, look, I only wished on that. I only wished on when I blew out my candles on my birthday. I only wished for $1 million, and you gave me $40 million, and I don't just take the other 39 back, right? It's a strange argument to me. A strange argument. Yeah, but we didn't want that much, so we're not going to calculate it. Really? Would you count it in your bank account if you made the full $40 million instead of 1 million? You sure would. You'd buy stuff with it or do something fun. That's a silly argument to me. I understand where they're coming from, and they're trying to debate the numbers. They're trying to use skepticism on it. But if you're creating labor, hours that you didn't have before, that's a huge value to the company. And being able to run tests more often in order to get more feedback for your developers more quickly, the better they can fix bugs, the faster they can fix bugs, which makes all of the development go faster, which is what your board level people want, your executives want. Because if they can deliver faster in the software world, they can outpace their opponents, their competitors in the marketplace. They can experiment with more things in the marketplace. They can find out what works better, and they can meet the needs of their marketplace better, which means, hopefully, that they either increase revenue, increase traction, they increase profit, or some other need that they have, whatever that need is for them participating in the market. If they can do it faster, they're usually in a better place to do it. Now, the other side of that is, if you're not doing this, your competitors are. They absolutely are. I'll give you an example. I got a note the other day saying that a background check that I had ordered had gone through with a company that does background checks online. And I had not placed an order for a background check. That's a little scary. I got that email, an automated email. I also noticed one day that the entire site just didn't work right, but it was back and working right within a matter of hours. The thing that's so cool about this application is that it is up to date. It is up to speed. And what I can do, unlike all the other background check services that I've talked to, I talked to 4 or 5 others, they have week-long application processes just for my company, Beaufort Fairmont, to be able to do a background check on one person. And the cost was astronomical. It was really, really high per background check. They had to come in and actually do some investigation of my workplace, of my office, all kinds of red tape that maybe at one point in time made sense, but doesn't make sense today. So this company that's doing this online, I went in and registered, and within 2 hours, not only had I input the information for a background check, I had the results from the background check. 2 hours, as opposed to weeks of a process that other companies did. Now, which one do you think I bought from? Which one do you think I continue to buy from? I'm willing to bet that the reason that they're doing that so well is because they're able to go out and use their digital assets in better ways and change them more quickly than their competitors. It was night and day between them and their competitors because they were able to do this in a way that made sense to me. It was easy, it was quick. I just slid my credit card and we were done. It was amazing how quick it was and how good the results were. They even had automated email afterwards for the customer service that said, hey, we just want to check in and see how things went with that. And I know it's automated, but that's pretty cool that they had all of that set up, just everything locked down. And I love that. I'd be willing to bet that they're doing these practices, DevOps practices, like you read in some of the good books out there. This is all really important stuff. All of this stuff is really important for DevOps. And there are a number of reasons for that. The main being that you just can't deploy without really great tests, and you can't do really great test automation without good deployment. They work hand in hand. One builds the other, iron sharpens iron. So make sure to keep that in mind. And if you haven't read Accelerate yet, make sure to read it. It's the report on DevOps. A couple other questions here before I get back into to other stuff. Simon asked, did you add maintenance cost to you? I did not. I did not. Make sure to add that back in there. I find that this gets, I find that's what gets expensive. Oh, so he's continuing on. Maintenance can get expensive over time if you write really poor test cases. If you haven't got development cooperating with you for this, if you're not building highly testable code, there are lots of pieces to this to make sure that this works right. And that's why we always try to do consultations with our clients before we start working with them, because we want to make sure that they're in a place where we deliver to them what they need. We want to make sure that we deliver to them what's right for them at that time. Sometimes they don't have a budget for maintenance. Sometimes they have an expectation that maintenance is going to be zero, like this spreadsheet has. And we have to work through that with them. Like I said, it's not perfect. It's different. So Marui, I'm not sure if I got that right, says, isn't CT a part of CI? So why calculate the ROI different? So I did mention that. I may have mentioned it in a different way than was received. I calculated continuous integration to be only running the test automation during the times that a normal test cycle would run. I calculated continuous testing as being running all the time. Continuous integration doesn't dictate at all that we only run tests during the time that we would have been testing manually. So I'm lying to you with that. That's not correct. However, I needed a way to distinguish between some things. And what I wanted to distinguish between was ROI when all you do is press the button once per test cycle. ROI when you have it running automatically, like once a day, for instance, you press the button during your test cycle, and then continuously testing, which would be not pressing a button, letting it run every single day or as often as it can, and seeing the difference between that. So this is a really good question, and thank you for pushing me to answer that. The answer is really not sure. Robert mentioned something here. I wasn't able to. If you want to clarify that a little bit, I'm not sure what you're referring to there when you talk about the answer. My friend Paul that I talked to earlier this week, he says, just a comment, one of the advantages of running automation tests daily, you also find weaknesses in your test quicker. For example, you might run out of virtual inventory, but never consider that risk until it comes up during a client demo. True story, lesson learned. Absolutely, I love it. You're absolutely right. And Ryan asks, how would you associate cost savings with automation that is providing higher data quality? I'm not quite sure how to answer that. I'm interpreting that. Let me read it again and just see. How would you associate cost savings with automation that is providing higher data quality? So if the data you're talking about is the data we get back from tests after they run, from a test execution, and that being a higher quality data than you had with manual testing, which you did less frequently, how would I, probably you want to say probably calculate, how would I calculate the cost savings from that? I don't know. I finally parsed the sentence here in front of you guys, and I don't know. We can talk through that though anytime you want. That's a really good question. And Ryan says, yep, I think that's what he meant. So I'm not sure how to do that. Some of these things are very, very difficult to calculate. I want to go through a couple other slides here as I've got your attention, some really important ones as we're moving along here. And let me make sure that I'm sharing my screen again. Thank you so much for all these questions. This is great. You should be able to see something that says tricks. So it's Halloween. You see a ghost in the coffee there. Tricks. These are some of the things that I see companies, the assumptions that they're making or the thoughts that they have that lead to tricks. They lead to bad things. One is assuming a one and done operation. In other words, assuming that I can go in and do some work and create some automation and then I'm done forever. It's just not the way that it works. When you write test automation, you have to understand what that's doing is it's like Legos, right? Everybody's seen Legos. Two Legos fit together just perfectly. Your automation is going to fit together with your code under test in a certain way. The purpose of it being there is when the code under test no longer fits quite right, we know it, and the test case fails. And then you have to go back and say, okay, is the code wrong? If so, let's fix it and make it fit again. If not, let's fix the test to be right and make it fit again. So you're never one and done with automation. Where we try to get is that it's easier to do that operation of making those two things fit again. Low investment, 1 hour per week. I see this all the time, and I've written about it. You guys can go read on making the case for full-time automation engineers on Tech Beacon. And on there, I talk about how often I go in and I talk with a client. And I say, okay, well, tell me about what's going on with automation. You sound like you're having struggles. They say, yeah, we sent all of our testers to a 1-week class on Java. They came back. We've got them writing Selenium. They all do it. That's great. How often do they do it? Well, whenever they have time when they're not doing manual testing. Okay, how often is that? Well, I guess it's about an hour a day yeah, but the problem is on Tuesdays, Wednesdays, Thursdays, and Fridays, we have other stuff going on in meetings, so I never really get to it then. So I really only do it Tuesdays. So it's really 1 hour a week. I see this all the time. Automation is a full-time activity. Writing test cases, learning to write code is a full-time activity. We wouldn't take a software engineer and have them write code 1 hour a week and expect them to be productive. Do not expect the same thing from your automation engineers. They need more time at that. And even worse, many times we train people to write code or to do automation and then give them far less time than they would need to learn it in the workplace. The investment in good test automation is high. The payout is extremely high, but there is a minimum bar to get to. And it's different with different organizations. You have to have a certain ante up, a certain payout, a certain down payment to make it happen. We try to make non-coders into coders. It's really hard to make that work. It took me 2 years in college of writing code plus a year or two after that before I really felt like I was writing code pretty decently. And even at that point, I thought I was better than I actually was. So it takes a long time to get good at coding, and we need to be that for test automation. Do you want bad code that's testing your code? I don't want bad code testing my code. I want good code testing my code. They're seeing ghosts of codeless and AI. So we believe that these things will work and it's just magic. Nothing good happens for free. Nothing good just comes to us and just magically happens. You have to work at it. You have to have discipline. You have to work hard and slow time to dev the tests. So no momentum. This I see the most. Guys, you have to have momentum in your projects. When you start this, start with something simple. Start with something easy. Learn to do test automation before you start trying to do difficult test automation. Get your momentum up. Celebrate small wins. Build on small wins. Don't go for big wins out of the gate. It's not the best way to do it. Treats. Here are some treats, the things that I see that go really well, or that the assumptions that successful teams make. Collaboration with developers. This was one of the #1 things in the Accelerate report on the DevOps report, the Accelerate book. Collaboration with developers. They go so far as to say that there is a correlation, and they indicate causation, but stats can't do that. There's a correlation between developers writing test automation and success with DevOps, success with continuous delivery. And I understand what they're saying. Developer skills are needed for good test automation. Whether that is a developer who does it, or it's someone like us at Beaufort Fairmont who have the skills to do these things, is up to you. Maybe it's your own people. Maybe you have developers working this some of the time. Maybe you hire people who have development skills to come in and do this for you or with you, and together. Test data management is a huge one. You can't run the same test repeatedly when you're changing the data. You have to manage the data properly. One button execution. We can't be running automation well. We can't do good test automation if in order to run a script, I have to do A, B, C, D, E, and F to set it up by hand, and then running the execution, and then seeing if it works, and then going back and doing the same thing again and again. That's not good not good execution. We need to be able to press a button, know that we've got a stable deployment that we're running against, know that we can run against it, that it's up and running, and have all the test cases execute whatever that suite is. Give us a report from that and sit down and look at the report. One button, and when you're in that place, you can set up a timer to do it. You can have it run on a trigger. Lots of different opportunities once you get to that one button executable. Testability. We gotta have testability, guys. I've seen too many applications where there's just no seam to get to. There's no way to test the application reasonably. This happens too often. The more we ask as testers, hey, how do I test that, from our developers? The more we ask questions like, how do I test that with automation? The better the testability of the product is going to get. We have to work together with our developers to make sure that happens. You guys see the other ones here. We're running short on time. A couple of quotes that I noted online. My friend Steve, he says, companies have a hard time determining ROI for a given feature, let alone from an automated test. Smiley face. Absolutely right. For me, the ROI is measured in increasing the speed of delivering new features. Can your org move swiftly knowing you will catch regressions? Absolutely. He also said there were 2 manual testers running manual smoke tests at least once a day. After automating those checks is just another name for validation points or for test cases. They could then spend that time developing T-shaped skills or doing exploratory testing. It's hard to affix a dollar sign to that, but I know there's value in it. And there are ways to attach dollar signs to that, but it gets very complicated very quickly. Nicholas, I thought this was wonderful. He says, are the number of bugs reported thanks to the automation suite a good indication of ROI? If no, how do we know it's doing anything helpful? Really good question. I might just leave that to you guys. Can automated tests report bugs? If they don't, and we use the results of automated tests to report bugs as humans, does it matter that the number is higher or lower than humans? Is it naturally going to be lower or higher than humans? If it reports no bugs, if it finds no issues, is that a good indication of ROI? How do we factor that in? Maybe this is a numeric factor that we add into our calculation. But certainly, if you're not finding regressions, changes to the software under test, you know that something's wrong. You're not going to find new bugs with automation. You may find places where things have changed. That's what we're really looking for with test automation. So is it a good indication? I don't know. The value of a test suite that can't determine change, very low to me. Why even do it? So if we just reframe the question there in that way, it may give us some insight. My friend Jean Ann, I mentioned that we were talking about ROI. She says, as long as you define smart automation, meaning that it should be done as value added, but not for the sake of doing automation. I fear companies take the latter perspective. So Jean's experience is that she has a fear that companies take the latter perspective. And certainly I've seen people do this. What I've seen more of my clients are smarter than that. More of our clients are smart. I see a lot of smart people in the software industry, and many of them ask the very same question that she's asking, and they say, look, we got to make sure that we're doing the right automation, not just any automation that's out there. I think some people would have this perspective, and they would be concerned about things like reporting test case numbers. And certainly there could be fear in that. Whatever metrics you take are the ones that the behavior that you're going to encourage. So there's that. Probably a lot more conversations to have here, but we only have 5 more minutes. I want to be respectful of your time. Make sure to write your questions in here. You can email them to me afterwards. This is being recorded. It'll be available up on the Beaufort Fairmont website shortly. But first of all, I want to know who is going to win the Amazon gift card. And I've got to figure this out quickly. I've got to make my random selection here. If it truly is random, let's see. All right, let's see if it, hopefully you can hear the drum roll there. And the winner is Simon G. Simon G, thank you for participating today. Congratulations on winning the gift card. It'll come to you through email. And good for you. I love having an extra $50 in my Amazon account because I can just go rent all, 4 or 5 of the Marvel movies and watch them. It's fun stuff. So look, get your automation today. Call us, 984-244-2313. My name is Paul Merrill. I run the company. We're a small company. We like helping out other companies with test automation. We're good at this. We like doing this kind of stuff. If you need people, if you need training, if you need whatever it is, if you need to know what your strategy is going to be, let's set up an engagement. Let's work together, and we have the right people and the ability to help you out. So give us a yell when you're ready. Keep us in mind if you're not ready right now, and tell all your friends. So thank you very much. I look forward to talking to everybody soon, and enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you.